Hold on. There you go. Save changes. Okay. Hey, what's up, guys? Hold on, I'm just getting it ready because I think it's gonna start soon. If I remember, I think it's gonna be on their Facebook, on this event. So I'm just checking real quick, before it starts. It starts in like 4 minutes, so we'll see. I'm going back to Alex Cobb's old thing on it. No, it wasn't that long ago. Hey Carlos, hey, what's up, man? Hey George, what's up? How you doing? Yeah, it starts in about a couple minutes, so I'm just saying something real quick. Just going. Okay. XRP. Hold on, this. Right here. I think he said Facebook, right? Was it gonna be on Facebook? On their Facebook page. Okay, so yeah, on their Facebook page we should start seeing something come up for this event, so we'll see. Alright, so let me put a timer on this real quick. Alright, you got about like 3 minutes. Oh, you been gone for a while? You're glad to be back? Hey, what's up, Jose? What's up, man? Hey, thank you for joining in, bro. Yo guys, we are set. There's a tweet right there guys. The Economic Club of New York going live in 30 something seconds. I guess we don't really need that. Okay, we're going live in like 30 something seconds, guys, so we should be good. We should be good. Hold on, let me share the stream out real quick and do that. Do Telegram. There you go. Alright, going live in 5 seconds. Going live in 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're off. Okay, where's the videos? Videos. Home. What's going on? There you go. Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay. We're live, guys. We are live. You guys enjoy. My bad, I forgot about the music. My bad. Sorry if I just like absolutely just did that. Hold on. Alright, well, it's coming up and probably shortly, so, but we got it. Let me tweet this out real quick. Must not be awake. Good morning. Please like and subscribe. Hey, appreciate that card detailer. To Aiden Trading, good morning. Aiden on Cobb stream. Oops, great sounds. Hey, what's up, Missy? Hi, and to support you here, I'm watching you. Hey, appreciate that. Thank you so much. Hey, what's up, TF, man? Hold on, guys. I'm just, let me tweet this out real quick. And then, yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. It's literally 4 something in the morning, and I got school, alright? I'm dedicated. I told my mom I was doing this, and she was like, okay, if you want to wake up that early. I'm like, I'm not waking up that early. I'm like, okay. But yeah, man. Even though I know Alex Cobb is streaming it, I still stream events too. For people that want to, you know, whatever. But yeah. Alright, so we got Brad Garlinghouse coming up. And there's a couple other good ones actually as well. So I don't know. I might still like put on this stream because there's a couple other good ones as well at this economic club in New York. Yeah, Alex Cobb wakes up, man. At least the dude, you know, doesn't have to go to school. I gotta go to school in like a couple hours, and I barely got any sleep. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. Oh man. And then we have another thing on that Fox thing. I have to do that at school. Oh man, it's kind of getting difficult just trying to stream stuff because literally everything happens when I'm in school. So kind of sucks. Army. Okay. Well, we're live, guys. Alright. So whenever they start this thing, we'll should get started pretty soon. So let me know how you guys are doing and all that good stuff. I'm just getting stuff ready so that way it doesn't screw up on me. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks for Aiden. Now let's get the show started up early before school to watch this. That's dedication, my man. You're going to play. I appreciate that. Yeah, literally I got like school in a couple hours. Like, I'm not joking. This is gonna get interesting.
I'm Barbara Van Allen, president of the Economic Club of New York. Currently in our 112th year, the Economic Club is the nation's leading nonpartisan platform for discussions of economic, social, and political issues. More than 1,000 prominent guest speakers have appeared before the club over the last century and have established a strong tradition of excellence. I'd like to take a moment to recognize those members in attendance of the Centennial Society, which is the backbone of the club. It enables us to have a strong financial core and obviously supports our wonderful diverse programs such as the one we're having this morning. I also want to welcome in the back table on the right our 2019 attending fellows, which is a select cohort of our next generation thought leaders sponsored by members of the club for our year-long program. Welcome to all of you. As a matter of fact, the 2020 class of fellows application is now on our website, so it's available. If you all would like to sponsor someone, those members in the room, we'd welcome you doing so. It's a pleasure for me to now introduce Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, an innovative global payments company which uses the power of blockchain to provide one frictionless experience for sending and receiving money globally. Prior to Ripple, Brad served as the CEO of a file collaboration service, Hightail. From 2009 to 2012, he was president of consumer applications for AOL, and prior to that, he held various executive positions at Yahoo. Earlier in his career, Brad helped to pioneer the voice recognition process industry. Sorry, obviously not my sweet spot. As CEO of Dollpad Communications, he currently serves on the board of directors of Outmatch and has held board positions at Ancestry.com and Tonic Health. The format today is a conversation, and we're fortunate to have Fox Business Network anchor Liz Clayman facilitating the interview. Liz will be sure to save time for questions from all of you, the members and their guests in attendance, starting with the first question from our class of fellows. As a reminder, please know that this conversation is on the record. We do have cameras here today. It's being carried live, and if you could please turn your cell phones off, that would be super. I'd like to now invite Brad and Liz both to come up on the stage and let the conversation begin.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. As Barbara said, we're going to tee it up for questions at the end. Your questions may change if he answers something up here, but he's going to be mad at me for saying this. Tee it up, right? Throw curveballs right at his head. That's what we're here for. Brad, thank you for being here at the Yale Club, and we want to thank the Economic Club of New York. Fabulous. All right, I want to start with the what. We know that Ripple is a technology that acts both as a cryptocurrency, which is XRP, and also as this high-speed, real-time network. So let's begin first with the crypto part of it, and we'll get to the payments in a minute. But tell us about crypto and the native coin that is Ripple, XRP.
So, look, the crypto industry, I think, is still very nascent, still emerging. You know, people ask me what inning we're in. I think we're still kind of in the batter's box. We haven't even gotten into the first inning. When I think about, how this is evolving, I moved to Silicon Valley in 1997 in the earliest days of the internet, and I feel it feels very similar in that blockchain technologies and digital assets or cryptocurrencies, I think, are going to touch a lot of different industries. But I think we're still figuring out what those look like. And in fact, I would argue that in many ways the hype has been ahead of the reality. And you saw that in kind of the run-up last year of the whole crypto market hit a peak of about $800 billion of market cap. Mm-hmm. Now I think it's around 200 and change. But that doesn't mean that there aren't lots of examples where these technologies will touch industries. I was explaining, Liz and I were talking beforehand, and I was saying, to me, that the novelty of a blockchain is allowing two parties to transact with certainty, but without trust. So today, if Liz and I are going to do a business deal together, some central counterparty is going to commute trust. Mm-hmm. As a consumer, that's Visa and Amex. In a banking world, that's correspondent banks, because you're using correspondent banks to do a cross-border transaction. Anytime you have a middleman facilitating a transaction, they're susceptible to how blockchains can enable two parties to transact without trust, but with certainty, because there's this immutable record out there. Right. Ripple is applying and using this open source technology, the XRP ledger. We're using that to solve a cross-border payments problem. And I think by going deep in that vertical, we've gained a lot of traction and adoption, as opposed to kind of some people have gone more horizontal and thin. We've gone kind of deep and narrow. But I think the cryptocurrency market's still in its nascent stages. I think it'll continue to grow and evolve as people understand use cases for how to apply these technologies.
Well, okay, so let me just drill down on the XRP part of it.
Sure.
And why I wanted to start with that is simply because it helps people wrap their mind around it. We're not going to assume that everybody understands how crypto works. Talk about specifically the XRP coin.
Sure.
Is it for example, is it a stable coin, which means it's backed by the US dollar? What is it?
So everyone here, I'm sure, has heard of Bitcoin. Bitcoin, started from the Satoshi white paper, and one of the things about how Bitcoin works is through proof of work. It has mining. You've heard about miners that are using compute power to verify transactions. That's expensive, and it causes a scalability problem. The inventors, the original engineers who developed the XRP ledger, were early Bitcoin engineers who saw that there was going to be a scalability problem of Bitcoin over time.
Well, it's also finite. There are 21 million Bitcoin, and that's the end of that.
That will be the end. Today, there's fewer than that. There continue to be Bitcoins mined, and so it's growing with the idea that it'll have a maximum of 21 million units. with XRP, the idea was, look, when you're doing this mining, it slows down transactions, it makes transactions expensive. There's a better way to do that, and they developed something called, that I won't technically go into, called the consensus algorithm. But basically the idea is you don't have to have mining to verify a transaction. But XRP, so this group of engineers developed the XRP ledger. It's an open source technology. Ripple owns a lot of XRP. We own about 55% of all XRP. So clearly we're very interested in the health and success of that ecosystem, but it is an open source technology that Ripple uses in its technical stack.
What is the use case? If we have people in this audience thinking, why would I buy an XRP? First, what's the value of it right now? I
did not look this morning. I think it's around 27 cents, but I'm not sure.
Okay, 27 cents per XRP.
Correct.
What is the use case? If I bought 10,000 of these to take a chance on it, a couple $100 or whatever,
Well, there's two things I think you're asking there. One is more of an investment question. Are people speculating on digital assets? I mean, the question...
They are.
Yeah, 100% people are. I mean, I think one of the challenges for the crypto space is that, I have said this publicly before, I think 99.9% of all crypto trading today is just speculation. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's actually some amazing stats. About 40 to $50 billion a day is trading in crypto. I mean, that is a lot. I mean, that is a very liquid market.
And by the way, there's something like 2,000 coins out there, different types of
tokens, yeah. So there's
basically top 10, sorry to interrupt, and XRP is one of them at the very top.
So there's a lot of trading out there, but most of it is just speculation. The question you're asking, I think, is what's the utility and what problem we're solving? I think that's the right question, because I think over a long arc of time, I think the value of any digital asset will be related to its utility in the world. Ripple is using XRP to solve this I know we're going to talk about this later, but a correspondent banking problem. I make the joke that if you and I decided to have a race to see who could get $10,000 to London the fastest, I would win if I just drove to JFK and flew it there. That's the fastest way to move money, which in 2019 in the world of the internet is a pretty surprising stat. So we are using XRP to help banks, to help regulated financial institutions facilitate cross-border transactions. There's other companies out in the XRP world that are doing other things ranging from micropayments to even identity management, other things using that open source technology, but Ripple is very focused on using it for that payments.
Can you give an example to this audience about how somebody used Ripple to buy or sell something?
XRP in that case, I think.
XRP, rather.
Well, I mean, you and I talked a little about this. XRP, in my judgment, and even really any crypto, I don't think the use case is a consumer use case today. Mm-hmm. I imagine some percentage of people in the room before coming this morning stopped at Starbucks, and you had no trouble paying. You used a Visa, maybe you had dollars in your pocket, I don't know, but it worked. And so when people talk about using crypto for a consumer use case, I go to what problem are we trying to solve? If there's not a problem, then let's not force change, and people aren't going to adopt a new thing unless it's helping you in some ways. So I think in first world countries like the United States, the euro, the yen, the dollar, the RMB, I don't see the consumer use case for crypto anytime soon. Now I say in kind of the G20 markets, because there are markets that have already lost control of their currency, where the transaction cost for a Visa transaction isn't 150 bips or 200 bips, it's 800 bips.
Correct.
And you go to Argentina and you get a menu and it has 3 prices on it. One is to pay in dollars, one is to pay in Argentinian pesos in currency, and another is to pay with a credit card. That probably will be, is there a risk for Argentina that cryptocurrencies are solving a problem? Yeah. I just don't think that's, 95% of global GDP, I don't really think that you need to use a cryptocurrency to solve a fiat problem. And we could also talk about this later, but I think that's one of the biggest mistakes. Libra, Facebook's white paper, they kind of positioned it as a new fiat currency. And that, of course, raises the ire of lots of governments.
Oh, yes, particularly the United States. As we know, Jay Powell is not a fan of it, and President Trump has said he's not a fan of it. The Ripple network, so now let's dovetail to that. The peer-to-peer platform, right? It allows for seamless transfer of money. Would that include everything from US dollars to yen to Canadian dollars to Litecoin to some of your competitors?
I mean, all of the above. The only thing you said, Liz is demonstrating she's very proficient in this industry. She mentioned Litecoin. We work with fiat currencies. We use XRP to help banks solve this payments problem. Right. Litecoin would have been an exception to that list. But today we work with banks like Santander. I was flattered Ana Botín was on stage at this event yesterday and talking about the work we're doing together. And Santander is a very large global bank, has lots of cross-border transactions. They deal with the friction of cross-border transactions of depending upon SWIFT. What they saw, and she talked a little bit about yesterday, is that they were losing market share to the currency clouds and TransferWises of the world. And for them to compete on a level playing field, they had to be able to have a different technology framework. And they went out and looked at the various options. This is about 4 years ago, and started working with Ripple, and it thus began that particular customer journey.
I know sometimes this is proprietary information, but could you name some other customers that would give this audience a sense of how you guys have already put the infrastructure into place? It's servers, right? Is it cloud or what?
We actually primarily use technology behind the firewall, and that's really because that's where the banks are comfortable. Right. I think over time some of that will move to the cloud. But look, we work with a lot of household names. American Express. I mean, here in the United States, American Express, PNC, Santander has U.S. and the largest bank in Eurozone. We work with Itaú in Brazil. We work with Siam Commercial in Thailand. We've now signed up over 200 financial institutions globally. Some of them you've certainly heard of. Some of them, when we sign contracts sometimes, I think I've never heard of that particular bank. But
there's MoneyGram as well. You've got a great partnership with MoneyGram.
MoneyGram is a really big deal. For the primary reason is I think MoneyGram, more than maybe any of our other customers, is demonstrating the value from a just pure economic point of view of why this is good for shareholders of MoneyGram. MoneyGram, for those who don't follow the company, is about a $1.2 billion enterprise value company. They have a lot of debt, so the market cap is only a handful of hundreds of millions of dollars. Right. What's interesting there is that they have negative working capital of around $300 to $400 million. Now, that negative working capital is there is because if I want to settle a transaction with the Bank of Liz, and the Bank of Liz is dollars and I'll be Mexican pesos, I would pre-fund money to the Bank of Liz, and Bank of Liz would pre-fund to the Bank of Brad. And then we would use messaging to debit and credit that. But that means I have put dormant capital out into kind of, almost think about it as the global transaction engine has to have oil in it to work. And so the oil is cash that sits in these accounts all over. For MoneyGram, that's several $100 million of negative working capital. The idea is don't use cash and pre-fund, but use digital assets in real time to move value. So the Bank of Liz could hold $1, sell $1, buy a unit of XRP, move the XRP across a digital ledger into, I guess you were dollars on pesos, from U.S. denominated exchange to a Mexican denominated exchange, sell the XRP, buy a Mexican peso. So I've gone from dollars to pesos in real time.
On which value, which currency value?
Well, you went from dollars to XRP, and
because currencies fluctuate day to day.
That's a great question, and so these transactions are happening so fast. You're talking about seconds. That one of the kind of red herrings here is people are like, hey, I've had bank executives say to me, look, we're not going to use cryptocurrencies. There's way too much volatility, and I let them get that out, and then I say, okay, wait a minute, let's actually look at the math on that. When you do a SWIFT transaction, the average transaction, let's just say, is 3 days. That's 270,000 seconds. Trust me, I did the math on that. If you multiply 270,000 seconds in a low volatility asset if you compare that to 3 or 4 seconds in a highly volatile asset like XRP, it turns out you're taking less volatility risk with an XRP transaction than you are a fiat. Now, what happens with SWIFT is someone is hedging that risk for you. When you do a transaction to dollar, yen, what have you, someone's selling you that currency risk to the settlement of 2 to 3 days from now. With XRP, it's happening so fast, you don't really need to hedge it because you're in and out of it in a few seconds. And so we haven't seen that be an issue. And MoneyGram went live with us this summer. Unbeknownst to us, when they did their earnings call in August, they went from skeptics to, we were working with them for a year to get that deal done. They went from skeptics to, holy cow, they couldn't say much more nice stuff about us. So we're pretty happy about that.
Okay. What about the revenue model? How do you guys make your money? Is it per transaction?
So there's two things we think about, and I'm fond of describing, I grew up in Kansas. My mom asks me what we do. Like, Mom, we sell software to banks. We sell a software license. We have transaction fees. We have professional services fees. We also we own a lot of this digital asset. Anything we do that's good for that digital asset is good for us. So if you're a gold mining company, you care about, you have a lot of reserves, you care about the value of gold. If you're Exxon, you care about the value of oil. So, we sell software to banks. We think about how to create value both in that context, but also in the overall context of what's the value of the gold we have in the ground.
Okay, 55% of XRP, the whole float, if you will, is what you guys own. Who owns the other part? Just people?
It's float.
Okay, what is the value of that? Give or take. Your float.
So there's 100 billion units of XRP that were created, and today I think we said it's around 27 cents. The total market is $27 billion. We own 55% of that, so what's that? $15 billion, plus or minus.
Okay.
Now, the float part is the remainder, so call it 10 billion.
And the free market judges.
Correct.
Going back to they see, some see it as a tradable asset. You guys don't look at it that way. I get it.
Well, we see it as a tradable asset to solve an institutional liquidity problem.
Yes.
So we definitely view it as a tradable asset. There's no doubt that, we treat it as a currency in that regard. I just don't think any crypto, let alone XRP, is going to, make inroads into solving that consumer use case.
Keeping with the network and these banks that are now signing up, and some of them are becoming believers here, is there proof of work? Tell us how that can actually be, because we hear about blockchain being a digital ledger. But where's the central aspect of this? I guess you could call it the central authority of Ripple.
Well, intentionally or unintentionally, you're walking into a very, very, very fraught with controversy question in the crypto space because...
Intentionally.
Yeah, right. So many people say, well, Bitcoin is the most decentralized asset out there, and there's no central operator, and nobody can control it. Asterisk, that's sort of true. It's sort of not true. The nature of how proof of work works is you have these pools of mining capacity, and mining meaning CPUs. So you think about where would you have concentration of mining? Well, that's where you have cheap power. So what has happened is you have 80% of Bitcoin mining occurs in China. You actually have 4 miners who control more than 50% of the compute power of the Bitcoin blockchain. The reason why that's significant is if you have more than 51% of the kind of compute power, you could actually change the blockchain. You could change, people talk about it as well, it's decentralized, it's immutable, you can't be changed, except if you have 51% of the compute power.
Okay.
Now, this has actually only happened once with a token called Ethereum Classic, ETC, and someone did do something called a 51% attack and was able to steal millions of dollars of value through simplistically just a double spend problem. So, is Bitcoin decentralized? Yeah, I think Bitcoin's decentralized, but the nature of proof of work means it's extremely expensive from a power consumption. I mean, here's an amazing stat. 1% of global energy consumption is Bitcoin mining. That is a holy shit moment in my opinion. Like, you talk about, the green protesters, and you're like, you look at what people are doing with Bitcoin mining, and to me it makes no sense at all. Now, I can't take any credit for this because this predates my involvement with Ripple, but the early engineers who developed the XRP ledger, they saw this problem coming. And they said, look, this is not the right way to think about verifying transactions because you're going to have to throw more and more power at this. And the further you get towards that 21 million, the more power you have to throw at it. So that has been growing more and more. What the XRP ledger does is it's a very, very simplistic view that, look, if there's a table of people over here, and I happen to know Don Donahue, if Don hands somebody $1 and everyone at the table agrees he handed him the dollar moved. And everyone agrees it moved, and we can agree that the consensus is that happened. The XRP ledgers have over 50 million ledger closes, and we've never had a transaction unwound, and it works. It's just a fundamentally different model for how it works.
I'm glad you brought up the dollar again, because I want to transition, particularly for this audience of the Economic Club of New York, China and other countries, but specifically China. China has completed a prototype, I don't know if you all know this, a prototype of a so-called China coin, a digital currency. I believe it's backed by the yuan.
It is.
And they are about to unleash their own network, similar to what we're talking about here. Are we behind in that here in America? I mean, the Fed is a skeptic when it comes to cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
The president is a skeptic. You have a lot of people who still don't quite understand it. Singapore, which is considered a financial center of the world, very forward-thinking when it comes to technology. That central banker has expressed a little bit of concern.
Yeah. So let's first understand what stable coins are kind of central bank digital assets is kind of the way they're described. And so what the Chinese government is doing is that they are apparently going to launch a central bank digital asset. Let's go back to the thing I said about Starbucks earlier. What problem are we solving? So I look at the Fed today, and I'm sure there are bankers here in the window or in the audience. And if you want to go and call on the Fed for liquidity, you go to the Fed window. You don't get cash. You get digits in a ledger. Mm-hmm. And so when, I'm JP Morgan and I go to the Fed's saying, okay, great, here's some sort of ledger change. It's already digitized. So I've actually been a little bit of a skeptic that central bank digital assets do much that we don't already do today.
So you don't think the dollar should be tokenized?
It already is. You think about it, how many people here, you look at your net worth statement on a bank account and those are just digits. Yes, you could go to the bank and get cash, but frankly, if you're asking for any more than a few $1,000s, you have to call in advance because they don't have the cash. So most of the US dollar is, quote, you said tokenized, I would say digitized. There is a little bit of a difference, but I think we always have to go back to what problem are we trying to solve? Mm-hmm. If we're solving a problem or creating customer value, then I think it's great. The only argument I have seen around central bank digital assets is if they want to expand the Fed window from serving a small number of regulated institutions to a mass audience. If everybody here could go directly to the Fed and have an account with the Fed, well, that's kind of interesting. Now we just put the entire commercial banking business out of business. That doesn't sound like a very good idea.
I'm feeling the room shivering at the moment. But I would also say, too, with China, they tend to have sometimes nefarious positions here. A China coin, if they ran it, they could see every financial transaction from everyone. They love that control. And on top of it, they could bypass U.S. sanctions with this.
Well, the bypass point is an issue, and let me pause on that one for a second. People have made this argument before, and I'm like, look, make no mistake about it. The Chinese government already sees every transaction. So whether it's a digital asset, yes, there's lots of efforts to circumvent through cash, but they see a lot of the transactions. Would this actually enhance their ability to see things?
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the challenge that Ripple struggles with, and you and I talked a little bit about before, is the crypto industry often gets painted with one broad brush. And you have, as you often do with a nascent market, you have the charlatans and grifters, and you have people trying to do bad things, and frankly, you have tokens designed for anonymity. And that is not going to fly. What Ripple is trying to do is say, look, you can use these digital assets to improve, to reduce friction, right, to reduce cost, to increase speed. That's good for global commerce. Whether you're the bank of Liz, you're the bank of Ward, you're the bank of anybody in this room, there's an ability to use these technologies to improve customer experiences, improve cost. Someone in this room, I'm sure, has lived overseas, and you've dealt with personally the experience of trying to move money into and out of the United States. It is fraught with challenges. And SWIFT has a published 6% error rate. Think about that for 1 second. Wow. If 6% of your Google searches resulted in no results, you would think the internet is broken. Yet our global financial infrastructure has a 6% error rate.
What is your error rate?
You're talking about virtually zero error rate. The reason is, before a transaction happens over RippleNet, Ripple's technology, the Bank of Liz, the Bank of Brad, it's a chatty, I'm already chatting with you. The way SWIFT works is a little bit more like a postcard. I go to the U.S. Postal Service box outside, I write a postcard, I write the address on it, I stick it in the mailbox.
Hoping it'll get there.
I have no idea what happens next. I don't know where it goes, I don't know how it gets there, I don't even know for sure it did get there. That's how the world was developed kind of 50 years ago. And by the way, I'm not trying, I know it sounds like I'm shatting all over it. Look, it works, but it could be much better. If you've lived in a house for 50 years, you want to renovate the kitchen, you want to renovate the bathroom. I look at how do we apply modern technologies to global financial infrastructure and cross-border payments as a way we can massively improve it for banks, for their customers, and we're not changing the regulatory framework. Every transaction is still KYC'd. Every transaction is checked for AML because the endpoint, the Bank of Liz, who we trust, is verifying those things already.
Before we take questions, because
Yes.
we've got a couple of more minutes for the audience, so I hope you guys are getting ready. Very interested to know about Facebook's Libra and how someone like you running Ripple and, of course, XRP looks at something like Facebook and the Libra coin that they expect to put out there. And I ask that because when that announcement happened, the value of a lot of cryptos, including XRP, jumped because people thought this gives it legitimacy. Do you view it that way?
Well, one is, I don't think XRP jumped. I would have to go back and look at when they actually announced it. I think so first of all, let's level set. Whenever someone asks me about Libra, I often interrupt them and say, you mean the Libra white paper? This is a white paper, people. Like, we are so far ahead of ourselves, and I frankly think the way Facebook has executed their rollout is, I don't understand why they handled it this way.
PayPal doesn't understand either.
Yeah, they definitely don't understand. They're out. So I think, they went out and said, look, are there ways we can apply these technologies to, benefit society? Yes. They decided maybe the best way to do that is, in my judgment, as they described, to launch was effectively a new fiat currency. I don't think going back to what I said earlier, I don't think we needed a new fiat currency. And I think it confuses people to have okay, I'm going to have a Libra token in my Facebook wallet and it's going to be tradable with dollars, as opposed to if I'm in the United States and I have a Facebook account, let's just use dollars. I think what Facebook did also, I would just observe, is kind of interesting. Had PayPal led that, had PayPal announced Libra and then Facebook joined 2 weeks later, would we be having the same conversation the same way? Facebook wanted to lead that effort, and I think in some ways their rollout demonstrated a kind of maybe a lack of self-awareness about their position with governments around the world, that Libra's likelihood of success would have been higher had someone else led that effort. And there were 28 members at the beginning, but I think at the end of the day, it is a Facebook-led effort. I think all of these things, and Anna Botín was so brilliant yesterday, and one of the things she talked about is the word trust. In the world I live in of banking, but certainly around crypto, trust is critical. And fair or unfair, I'm not even going to take a position on, Facebook has eroded its trust with its users, and certainly it's eroded its trust with governments. And so now you're saying, hey, we're going to get more aggressive in this. The comparison, because it launched around June, and right around June, the announcement around the white paper was around June. Right around then, the Boeing was having another crisis around the 737 MAX problem. A friend of mine reached out to me and said, Facebook announcing a cryptocurrency is a little bit like the idea of Boeing announcing in the middle of the 737 MAX crisis they're going to launch a new double-decker airplane. And it's just like, why would you do that? You already have this massive problem. Why don't we get that sorted out and solved before you go and create a whole other front on your war?
Well, whether it's Facebook's Libra white paper announcement or people's Bitcoin disappearing and them calling the Fed and screaming about it, one thing is coming, and that is regulation.
Yeah.
If you were in the room with the regulators, whether it be the Securities and Exchange Commission, the FDIC, whoever, what 2 or 3 things would you insist be in that regulation?
Well, you're going to think I'm dodging the question. I swear I'm not. We have regulation. We have regulation. Because what you're asking me is what are the new regulation? In effect, you're saying what new regulation should exist for this? And I think, we have extremely robust banking regulation. Any new entrant in that should be subject to those regulations.
But when people in this room say, are you a bank, you would say no.
Well, I'm not a bank, meaning I don't hold deposits. I don't have accounts. I don't have wallets. When I go talk to regulators, what I quickly explain to them is your regulatory framework that exists today is going to exist exactly the same the day after. Before we went live with MoneyGram, we didn't talk much about that, but we got on the phone with MoneyGram's regulators, and together we briefed the regulators about what we're doing. And as soon as they understand that this is just a simpler infrastructure way, look, in some ways we're plumbers. We're enabling a much more efficient plumbing, but the endpoint where regulators care is, some governments care about capital flow controls, some care a lot more about KYC and AML and OFAC and any other acronyms. They get enforced at the endpoint. Mm-hmm. We don't change that. You can't do an anonymous transaction on RippleNet because every endpoint we work with is a regulated financial institution.
But by that logic, you're saying that nothing bad will ever happen at Ripple. There will never be a breakdown. Nothing.
Well, what I'm saying is there's no difference in the risk today than tomorrow. So yes, today there is risk when you're using SWIFT and when you're using ACH and when you're using all the different infrastructure technologies today that allow money to move. There's risks, right? There's hacking risk, there's fraud risk, there's all kinds of things, and we see those. Nothing changed. You started using Ripple's technology underneath, and all those risks are still the same, but they didn't get worse. Now, in some ways, you could argue they got better in various ways. I'm not even trying to argue that. I'm just trying to explain, when regulators look at this and they say, what new regulation should we have? I look at it and say, well, no. We have robust regulatory frameworks. Ripple's attitude is we're pro-regulation. Like, we're not trying to change that. We are not trying to circumvent it. And the challenge for us has been many in the crypto community. You hear crypto and management. Some people in this room, you heard crypto and you're like, ooh, Silk Road, drugs. And yes, there are bad actors in that system. There are also bad actors that use the US dollar. This is a new way to do that. And what we're trying to do is say, we can bring these technologies to bear in a regulated world to solve real problems that really improve the economy.
Well, I know, but the way the regulators think, they want to create something. So you want to be part of that conversation.
For sure.
I want to open this conversation right now to the audience. We do have a roving microphone, but let's begin with the fellow table at the back. And please state your name, with whom you work, and of course, your question.
Hi, I'm Peter. I work for Citi Private Bank. So my question was just, what do you see in terms of your risk going forward, whether that's regulatory or security, digital security?
Well, so I agree with what Liz was saying earlier, even though I really wasn't dodging the question. I think regulatory dynamics are probably the most important thing for the crypto industry and certainly for Ripple. And you see, the macro trend line here, I think, is going very, very well. So 3 or 4 years ago, it was, I think, a very uncertain world. Now you do have things like Facebook happening, which makes it much more of a front and center. But look, the UK government has been very progressive around this and very clear about their view on the regulatory frameworks around crypto. The Singaporean government, the Japanese government. But you also have a bunch of governments that have either been neutral. The U.S. has been kind of silent-ish. India has been rather negative. So I think that is the journey we are on. And I think anytime you have a new technology, people are trying to figure out how could it be abused, what are the risks. But I think that the number one risk and opportunity is really on the regulatory side. You asked also about security. Like I think account security is a challenge for fiat. It's a challenge for crypto. J.P. Morgan and Citi have been dealing with it for 100 years, and yet still, not that anyone at Citi wants to admit it, but every day in one way or another, Citi is hacked. Now, it's not because Citi, it's because the end user. I mean, every human in this room is the softest endpoint of any cyber risk. So I think that's still a risk and will continue to be so in the crypto world.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening on a daily basis, and it was ever thus. We were talking earlier, and I said that's like people flipping out of their minds because Tesla had a car fire, and yet there's something like 45,000 car fires with classic combustible engines every day on American roads, and you're going to hold Tesla to some different structure or level. It's important to keep it in perspective because we all are hearing about this. So I'm sure you guys are still maybe not sure. You really want some questions here? Raise your hand and we're happy to. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Dale St. Clair, Park Avenue Finance. Have you worked with any of the financial institutions, specifically IFEs, permissioned by OSIF in Puerto Rico under Act 273?
You're going to have to translate that one for me. Sorry.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to. I didn't know.
That was over my head.
So OSIF, Office of Financial Institutions in Puerto Rico, 2017, we helped craft the infrastructure for Act 273, which allows IFE licenses focused in crypto banking with a host
Oh, right,
of
right, yeah.
permissions. And so you haven't worked with them, that's great.
I'm mildly familiar with this in the context that a number of different crypto companies decided to domicile in Puerto Rico, and I actually think some people I know decided they were going to relocate to live in Puerto Rico for tax reasons. I'm not super close to it. I'd actually love to learn more about it afterwards and hear more about it.
Great, I will come talk to you. Thank you very much.
This gentleman, right here.
Hi, Phil Bruno from McKinsey. Around the world, many central banks and banking systems are setting up real-time payment systems. So you can move money from one account to the other in 2 seconds or less.
Yep.
And in Scandinavia this year, they're standing up a company called P27. So you can now move currency across border in 4 countries. Why don't we just link up these real-time payment systems and be done with it?
Yeah.
Right? Why do we need Ripple or cryptocurrencies?
I think it's a great question. I'm going to answer it in 2 different ways. First, I'm going to say, I imagine a number of people in here have a PayPal account and you probably have a Venmo account. Have you ever tried to move money from Venmo? PayPal owns Venmo, just to be clear. Have you ever tried to move money from Venmo to PayPal? You can't do it. You have to go Venmo back to your bank and then back to PayPal. The reason why I start with that answer is, in a perfect world, what we see an interoperable payments network world of the future, where all payment networks are interoperable. The world we live in today, and I'm using PayPal and Venmo as the example, is highly not interoperable. What you're talking about in the U.S. Fed and the faster payments, that's a domestic clearing. We actually think, yes, that would be fabulous. Actually, Ripple was one of the kind of leads on that task force. At some point, though, you have to go from the U.S. dollar to another currency. There are examples, as you described, in the Nordics that are coming together in small pockets. The question is, can you do that across hundreds of countries, or a couple hundred countries, and thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of different payment networks? We see a world where today the Internet of Information uses TCP/IP and HTTP to enable interoperability across information networks. How do we enable interoperability across payment networks so that if I want to go from my Bammel account to Paytm, the leading mobile wallet in India, and it's Mother's Day, and I want to send my mom $100, that I can do that with no big deal. Today, to send that $100 to my mom in India, would be very expensive and very uncertain as to how it would ever get to Paytm, the largest mobile wallet provider in India. So I view those as all positive developments. Some governments have some domestic governments, like Mexico's local clearing is way better than the United States. That's good. Now if we get into with MoneyGram, we get into one bank in Mexico, we can get to any other bank in Mexico in sub 1 hour. That's way better than the United States. So I think we want to see that advancement.
The lovely lady in the way back.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Darst. I'm a Topeka High School alumna, by the way. So
hey, holy buddy,
So I just wanted to ask you quickly. You mentioned a use that you see limited use case scenarios for consumer applications, but I wondered how you feel about, or whether you see a future for Ripple and/or XRP and/or cryptos generally in asset tokenization specifically, which I know has gotten some attention lately.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm from Topeka, Kansas, and she is also apparently. That was a long time ago, but the tokenization of assets and making them more fungible, I do think there's some interesting projects going on in this space in the crypto world. There's people saying, hey, you want to buy access, you want to buy as an investment, let's say an apartment building in London, but you don't want to buy a whole apartment building. Can people tokenize the apartment building and then allow me to buy part of it and then benefit from that appreciation, I think is the question you're asking. I actually do think that's interesting. I don't know much about it. I think one of the challenges for the crypto industry has been there's a lot of ideas and not as much execution. I want projects like that to be successful. Ripple has invested about $500 million in other crypto projects around the ecosystem. And now part of that is because, sure, we want to make money, but part of that is because we want we want all boats to rise. And so, and actually, and I'm going to really screw this up, and I hate that this is being videoed out, but we invested in a company that's doing something like that. I think it's called Securitize, and the CEO of that company is going to send me an email and be really angry that I can't remember.
Well, that's the one thing about Ripple here you guys should know is that they, in a time when a lot of these coins and these systems are going under or consolidating, Ripple just bought Algrim, which is an Icelandic company. You guys are doing bolt-on acquisitions, right?
Yep.
And
so we bought, well, the first 4.5 years I was at Ripple, we didn't buy a single company because my attitude was focus, 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 gain traction in what we're doing. In like maybe when the dot-com bust happened, the strongest used that as an opportunity to acquire things and add things on. We talked a little about, I've always been enamored with Amazon and kind of watching how they grew during that time. I certainly think where Ripple is, we're in a very strong financial position, not just in the investments we're making, but we also made 2 acquisitions in the last few weeks to kind of, it was both small acquisitions, but to kind of bolster the team and take advantage of the quote unquote crypto winter.
And the engineers that come with it. Are we way behind and bankers are dealing with this too, in training and teaching engineers in this country?
Yes, Ripple is trying to help on that. We announced something called the University Blockchain Research Initiative. We gave away $50 million of grants to schools, about half in the United States, half outside the United States, to actually seed blockchain research and blockchain education at universities, because we do feel like this is a 10 or 20-year evolution of how technologies can apply.
But not K through 12, right? I mean, don't you have to lay the groundwork?
Yeah, we were focused.
Okay, that's your next project.
Yeah, I don't know.
Any other questions as we wrap this up? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Max Nita Sossad with Rally Road. I was wondering if you could start over again right now, what would be sort of the perfect use case that you would want to get into? Or are there use cases that you think are better than Ripple that you might want to pursue?
When I joined Ripple, we were a small company. It was about 4.5 years ago, and there were 3 use cases the company was focused on. One was a smart contracts platform called Codius, using the XRP ledger. The second was a company, kind of a project called Global Identity, and the third was the payments thing. My view was we had to focus, and choose one. And if we were lucky with that one over a period of years, maybe we'd get the opportunity to do number 2 or number 3 or number 4. I don't look back. I mean, given what has transpired, one could argue that we should have focused more on smart contracts and what happened with the Ethereum network. I don't regret that. I think the payments, like, you have north of $20 trillion going cross-border each year. It is fraught with error rates, and it's slow. It's expensive. For me, it's a classic like Silicon Valley going up against the big behemoth Goliath. But it's so broken. I mean, when I go talk to banks, it's a beautiful thing for me because banks don't like Swift. They're frustrated with Swift. Their customers don't like Swift. And that's a great place to be when you're selling into that. So do I think there's other vertical use cases? And maybe if I went back, could we do it differently? Sometimes I wonder that, but I also think we have been so fortunate through a little bit of luck and a little bit of skill that we find ourselves with a lot of momentum in, I think, really solving a problem using these technologies at scale.
This is such an important morning. I hope you guys all appreciate this because you're at the forefront of getting Brad's story about Ripple, cryptocurrency, and the networks here. Thank you so much. And if you have other questions, a little bit of a tease here. Afterward, I'm going to be interviewing Brad once the room clears, and it will air at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Clayman Countdown on the Fox Business Network. But I will have a surprise question for him that he doesn't know I'm going to ask. So you have to tune in if you can.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much to the Economic Club of New York.
Thank you both. That was just a terrific conversation. Brad, Liz, thank you. I want to just mention that we have some great upcoming events. Bob Iger will be here from Disney. Elena Botello. David Cordani of Sigma is coming. Michael Dell, we just added November 21st to the schedule. The CEO of Uber. And, of course, we're going to wrap up with Larry Fink of BlackRock and with our closing dinner in December. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Holy. Oh. Damn, bro. I just dropped the soda. This was great. Yeah, it was actually pretty good. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Let me check the charts real quick, actually. Let me go on TradingView real quick. So let me know what you guys think about it. For people who just watched it, I'm sorry. Some problems were happening. And I appreciate everybody that came to watch on my channel. Because I know over 3,000 people are on Alex's channel. Which is crazy. Hold on. Oh, I gotta sign up. I gotta sign in. But yeah, I actually think it was pretty well, she actually asked some pretty good questions. I actually didn't expect it to be that good. I thought it was just gonna be, but she actually asked some pretty good questions. So that was actually a pretty good one. I'm not gonna lie. We'll see what happens at this Fox Business one later today. Oh man, and I gotta get ready for school. Well, not now. I got like 20 minutes, and then I get ready. Oh man, this is gonna be crazy. Hey man, at least Alex Stein gotta go to school. I should probably tweet that out. That'd probably be funny. Nah, it's all good though. That was pretty worth it. And then we have the Fox Business one later today, so I'll stream that one. So far, for people that want to see charts right now, XRP is at 27.528 cents. I guess you could technically count it if you round it up. Nothing too crazy. But for people who want to see the charts right now, I think that's pretty much it for me. I just wanted to stream that for you guys, and yeah, now I gotta get ready for school. Might as well. I get up in like 20 minutes as like part of my routine. So, but yeah, hey, I don't know her exact name. What is her name? The person that interviewed, that was asking those questions, Liz Clamon, yeah, Liz Clamon. Yo, shout out to her. She does very good stuff. Let's bring some pretty good questions. That was a pretty good thing they did. All right, yeah, so I think that's it for me. I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Hopefully you guys have a good day. And yeah, I will see you guys later. Thank you everybody that tuned in. And now I'm off to school. Or getting ready for school. But yeah. Alright, actually hold on. Let me see what the market is doing real quick before I just end it overall. I'm just gonna go on CoinMarketCap real quick before I end this stream real quick. So market cap, Bitcoin 8,000, Ethereum 181, XRP 27 cents, Bitcoin Cash 232. What about Link? What's Link at right now? Chainlink 252. Okay. Tesneo. Okay. So we'll see what happens later today and see if there's any more news. And yeah, alright, so thank you so much for joining the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. And yeah, hope you guys have a good day. Peace.